Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Purposeful Conversations with me, Emmy, here in the PAMI Code Facebook community. And I'm so delighted to have our guest speaker for today because I know that in our community, so many of you, and actually all of you I know, are here because you are aiming to live purposeful and meaningful lives. That's why you are part of our community. But sometimes fear can stop us, sometimes fear can be paralyzing, and it could prevent us from doing what we want to pursue in our lives. So, our speaker for today is a coach, consultant, and international speaker. And she's here with us today to talk about how to live boldly and without fear in life. So, I'm really excited to be inspired and to be motivated by the one and only Natoshia Anderson. Hi, Natoshia.
Hi, everybody, and hi, Emmy. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show today and to talk about the things that um, I'm really passionate about. Whew, so when we talk about fears, it's like you almost have to take a breath first. But yeah, I'm ready let's dig in.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a universal human emotion, and certainly for us, we do experience fear, but for those who are brave, for those who are who have courage, we carry on even if we experience the fear. But before we get into that, Natosha, tell us a little bit about yourself, and what's your background, and how did you get into speaking and consulting and coaching?
Oh, okay. So thank you for that opportunity. So I am Dr. Natoshia Anderson. I am the CEO of Smart STEM. Um, we are a consultant business. Dr. Tasha does a lot of myself, we do a lot of consultant work in and around STEM. And STEM is an acronym that stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So my background is as a mechanical engineer.
Wow.
I was a mechanical engineer for 10 years. And then I went into education. I have taught mathematics and physics and engineering courses at both the K-12 level and in higher education. And now what I do is consult with people who want to do it better, people who want to specialize in minority students, women, and that has sort of led me to speaking. So I've been on stages talking about diversity and
Yeah.
inclusion, talking about women empowerment, how we can get the corner office, how we have to sort of bust past the fear like we're talking about today to make sure that we're getting our due as women, but specifically for myself as a minority woman, because the odds are not in our favor, as I'm sure you and your audience know. Minority women are few and far between in terms of CEOs sitting in the big chair in the corner office. There's not that many of us in general as women, but minority women, the numbers are really low. And if we talk about within STEM,
Mm.
they're lower. So I exist to ensure and help our younger sisters come along, those who have an interest in STEM, who are working in STEM, but are finding that they're burning out or they don't know if they want to continue. I'm here to support them and to give them lessons and whatever level of support they need so that they can continue. We can't overcome the deficit if people are leaving.
I love it. And I can certainly relate to that. I mean, I've been in academia for over 20 years, and certainly for the STEM subjects, it's a male dominated field, and especially for minority women, there's really far and few that we have in these fields. So it's really quite inspiring that you did pursue that, and that you're now supporting other women, and particularly women from minority backgrounds, I assume, to pursue these professions, and to actually go for it if that's something that they want to aspire to do, and not only just to do it, but to actually excel and make the most of their career in that field.
Well, it's been set up, honestly. If we were to speak candidly, the environment as it currently stands is set up for us to fail.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that because I've
Mhm.
noticed that, for example, in academia, there's like a leaky pipe
Mhm.
that, yeah, you're getting them in, but somewhere along the way, you get leaks, and eventually when you get to the top, there's no one there because they've
Because
all been drained out.
Right, because the mechanisms that have been used are all set up for men. And we know that, I mean, fundamentally, men and women are different. We think differently, we move differently, we believe differently. They're just not the same. So we're entering into environments that aren't set up for us, but we're expected to coast along. We're expected to not be who we really are, but thrive in these environments. And that's like fitting a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work, and we've known that it doesn't work for a long time. And it's now that we are noticing that the numbers are dismal, that we're saying, okay, well, let's look and see what we need to do to change it. It can't be cosmetic changes. We got to get down in the
Structural.
Mhm. Yeah, and make those needed changes. The environment has to change. It has to be more welcoming. It has to include seeing ourselves in all of our capacities. And I mean that in like a diverse um, STEM faculty members, STEM teachers, STEM administrators, in order for us to make lasting change in it.
Yeah, I have to say that that's a battle that I fought years ago, and I'm sad to say that I actually left for that reason. It's almost like you're banging your head on a wall
Yeah.
and you're actually just hurting yourself. And in my situation, because I was getting hurt so much, I've decided to leave. Well, you are encouraging women, and especially minority women, to actually try and stay and make the change from inside. But that does take a lot of courage, a lot of gut, and
It,
support as well
it,
from the
mhm.
existing structures that are already there. So what's your way around this? Like, what do you have to say about that?
So I'm glad that we're having this conversation. So a girlfriend and I, she's actually a fellow engineer. We were talking about this the other day, and unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunately, you have to know the game. You have to know it's some you have to best them at their own game. And I don't mean by changing who you are or doing what you do or walking differently. I mean understanding the game, how it's played, learn the nuances, and then excel. And so that does take time, but it also takes coaching. You
Mm,
you know what I mean, and mentorship, and not only that, but because the engineering, or I'll say, because I'm an engineer, STEM culture is one of competition, because again, it's a male dominated field. And so they love to compete. What I've learned and what has worked for me is learning how not to compete with my fellow sister. Like
mm.
we have to support each other, because we need more of us in spaces where we're doing the work. And so it's really hard for you to be the only one. But if there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 of you, and you all band together, that is what they need to see. But what happens is we get in these environments and there can only be one. So then
Yeah,
we're in
when they put you
competition.
together as
Right.
competitors, yeah.
Right. So if we don't allow them to do that, if we work together to and make change, then that's how it happens. Because it's one thing for me to say it and I'm the only one, but then there's 2 and there's 3 and there's 4 and there's 10 saying the same thing. You almost have to listen. And so that's a part of the game that it gets played, and that's everywhere. That's in academia,
Mm.
that's in the business
In the
world.
industries, yeah, in corporate, and
Yeah,
yeah.
so they pit us against each other, and so therefore we don't even enter into the sisterhood portion of it. Like, that if you're going through, this girl's probably going through too. So what
Mm.
happens if you guys have a conversation and you guys agree, you know what, we're gonna support each other. Whatever you need, whatever I can provide, and vice versa, then let's do that, as opposed to, I got to get this girl out of here.
Mm.
Because then because then you're back at square one. So all of the things that you thought you're still the first and the only, or you're the only. Who wants to
Then
do that?
yeah, I love that. When you mentioned the mentoring and having a community and having to support each other, that's actually a good way forward. But it does take a bit of effort. It does take a bit of time, and yeah, support as well. If even if you have this community of women coming together, and if the existing structure doesn't listen, that could be yeah, that could be challenging.
It can't. So here's what I've learned. Um, I am not one to tell you to stay in a space that is unhealthy for you. That's not going to do you or anyone else any good in the long run. So get out if that's what you have decided is best for you. Every environment, honestly, is not fixable unless you break it.
Mm.
I mean, and that's true. That's a true statement. So you have to decide what it is that you where you are. So it's like if you're at a point to where I don't like to go into this place. I feel anxious and stressed even thinking about going. The people there don't listen to me. There's really I don't see myself advancing here in any way, shape, or form. It's time for you to go. And I
Mm.
would tell you to go. I would help you get your resume together. Make sure you get an interview, do the cover letter, all of the things you need to do to depart. Um, those are real situations, and so this is about being courageous to me enough to assess yourself in real time and then make a decision. Be
Yeah.
be smart. Be smart about it. Um, and then take all of the stuff that you learned, because I think sometimes we want to just forget about that bad experience and press forward. But take all of the stuff that you learned from that bad experience. I'll tell you an example for me is had a bad experience when I was in academia and with a leader. So I was asked to become a member of an individual's team. It was rough. It was rough. Like we didn't fundamentally agree on much of anything. So it was
Mm.
like banging heads all the time. When I was actually able to interview for a different position in another division and got it, and I was leading a team, I actually used all of the experience I had with that individual and in that situation to really decide, okay, so now I'm in a leadership position. I can understand what the motivations were, but then make a decision to do things differently.
Mm.
What the way I interacted with people, the way when things had to be done, how was I interacting with my faculty and my staff members. So I didn't forget about that situation or that period of
You
time.
took it as a learning experience, all the skills, all the pain, and the agony that you
Right.
got from
and,
there. It
and you
actually became something that's part of you, and what you can do, and you can use it for your next steps.
Right. So, and I think that we shouldn't forget them, because I tried to do a deep dive into, okay, what things can I take from this situation? And I'm always like that in every situation that I'm in, whether that's good or bad. I'm like, okay, what is the universe trying to show me here?
Mm.
Or what? Even if I'm going into, you feel like sometimes you just know this is going to be a thing. This is going to be a situation. Okay, I'm always like, okay, God, what are you trying to show me here? And I'm trying to get the lesson, because I don't want to prolong it. Like I don't want to be here
Mm.
any longer than I have to be.
Yeah.
So let me get the lesson so we can so we can keep moving, right?
You learn, and you make an informed decision on what you need to do next. And I like that you're tapping into faith as well, and recognizing that there is a bigger plan, I suppose, why these things are happening, and you just need to tap into that to really understand what is God. If you are a Christian, or if
Right.
you're a religious person, what is God telling you in this scenario, and what you need to do about it, and where is it leading you, where is it taking you.
Well, he is the greatest teacher of all time. And he is continuously placing us in situations or giving us opportunities for us to grow. And I fully understand that in every situation, there are teachable moments, both for ourselves and for other people who are in the situation with us. And so it's my job to know and to interpret those situations and get the lesson. Because I also know that he will allow you to stay in situations until you get the lessons. I also understand that these lessons are meant for your good, because he's got a place, there's a
Mm.
purpose for you being here, and you're going to need this little nugget right here in this situation, because where you're going, you're going to need it.
Mm.
So if you
There's
don't
a
pick it up
reason for
here,
everything.
right, so if you don't pick it up here, he's going to provide other opportunities so you can get it. So I'm always like, let me get it the first time.
I don't want to go through it again. Let me learn from this now. Pick it up and then move on.
Exactly. Yep.
Like, I don't want this again.
No, I don't.
I love it. I love it. But I mean, it certainly does take a lot of courage to actually open your eyes, when you're in a situation that's not really in your favor. Or I know, especially we've been talking about minority women, especially women in male dominated industries. It does take a lot of courage, first of all, to pursue that, to be
Mm.
there and to be able to excel as well. You're putting yourself out there, and I know that sometimes you might actually feel a bit like you don't belong there. I don't know. Do you have that feeling, or do you actually own the space and say, yeah,
So that's so interesting. That's a deep question. Because the answer is kind of yes or no, yes and
mm,
no. I think it depends. If you are really clear on who you are as an individual before going into a space where you're the only, um,
you're the odd one out.
yes, so like there's no one there who looks like you.
mm,
um, if you are clear on who you are before you get into those spaces, then I think you can walk into a room and own it, because you're clear about who you are, what your purpose is, why you're in the room. You're clear about your abilities, and you're confident in that knowledge. If you aren't, it could be difficult,
mm,
because like in my case, I had groups of people who would try to tell me who they thought I was supposed to be in those spaces. And true, full disclosure, it's like there were times when I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, that's who I'm supposed to be, okay,
yeah.
let me try to be that. And it didn't work out in my favor, because the nature of who you really are always shines through, even
Mm,
if you're trying to be something else. It's like you can't lie to you. You can only do that for so long before your real self shows up. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I tell it to anyone: if I can't go into a place and be authentically who I am, then I don't need to be in that space, and I'm
yeah.
perfectly fine with that. But
Yeah.
it took a while. It took a while. It took a while for me to learn myself enough, and to become confident in myself enough to be able to say that, to be able to say, yeah, this is not a good fit. I'm probably not what you want,
Mm.
and be fine with that.
Yeah, you need to be actually clear. And for me, I have to say, I've been in environments where I felt like I actually fit in. That even if I look different from everyone else, I still feel as if, oh yeah, I'm part of this. I belong here. But there have been spaces where I felt as if my light was being taken away, that I had to fit in
Yeah,
and have a different identity, and as a result I'm losing my own identity. It's just very difficult to be in that position, to lose your voice, and
right.
to not to be able to pursue your passions, or your values, just to be able to fit in. And for me, when the environment is like that, that even if you want to make changes and you're not making any progress because you just don't fit in, it's a hard battle. It
It
really
is.
is.
It is. And I think that there are many of our younger and some of our older sisters who are battling that every day as they go in to tech companies or to engineering firms. to some of our scientific laboratories. They're battling that right now because, they have this love for a thing.
Mm.
Maybe they really love biology, or they're a
Yeah.
botanist, or they're a chemist, or they love technology. They can code their behinds off, or they really love design and they're in engineering, but they're in spaces that doesn't honor them. And how do you walk into that space every day and not feel like your pieces of yourself is being chipped away at?
Mm.
So we have some choices to make, but
How do
I
you
would tell them.
resolve that? Because I had my dead end, if you like, for that. I had that dilemma where I actually do love the field. I do love my research. I love teaching, but the environment was so toxic that it's gonna literally kill me
Right.
if I stayed in that environment. So how do you how do you find the courage, or actually what would you suggest to your coaches, or to the people that you mentor? How do you resolve that?
So I think a big part of that is having my clients get clear on what it is they want versus what it is they don't want. So
Mm,
it's easier for us to say, okay, I don't want this, I don't want these things, because maybe those are the things you're experiencing now. I don't want these things. Okay, but let's get clear about what it is you do want, because we want to pursue those things, right?
mm,
So, and that takes some time for some people because they haven't really thought about what they do want. They've just been dealing with, I know
what
I
they
don't want
don't want.
these.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first clear step, is understanding, okay, I want these things. And then it's okay, am I in a space, meaning headspace? Am I in a headspace where I can actively
Person.
pursue these things? And then what does that look like? Like,
Mm,
what's the first next best step that I need to take to get from here to there?
mm.
And then for me, it's always a matter of, okay, so let's make plans to take the step. And then that sort of gets
That's
us
where
into
it
a.
gets, yeah, start
Mm-hmm,
the ball rolling. So it
mm-hmm,
starts with clarity, and it's shifting the energy as well from this is crappy, I don't like this.
yes,
Instead of focusing on what you don't want, you're actually looking forward to actually what you want,
right.
and looking for ways to pursue that. But you have to be clear first and foremost what it is that you want.
Right. And that's the thing, is that many of us are so focused on the negative portion that we haven't had the opportunity to really just sort of sit and say, okay, well, I know I don't want that, but what is it that I really want? And that you can do this in all areas of your life.
Mm,
If you're single or divorced and you're looking for that next relationship, well, you knew your past relationship, you didn't want any of those things, or maybe you did like some of those things. Okay, well, let's make a list of the things you did like, and are these the things that you're sure you want to have in your next relationship? So just getting clear. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really worked for me is writing it down and putting
mm.
a time stamp on it. Because sometimes we can say we want a thing, but then we don't move at all. And since I am, per my engineering background, I am deadline driven.
Of course. It is so structured. There's a timeline. I know my dad's an engineer, by the way. So I know the logic and
Right.
yeah, it's so
So
real. And
Right. So I need a time frame. So okay, so by this date at this time I will be here, or I will have done XYZ
yeah,
1, 2, 3. I find that it works for me, and then
yeah,
being able to visually see it, it does something for my mind to say, oh my God, I got to get on that. I've slacked off. I need to make progress towards that. So it really works to have it done. So when I was finishing up my dissertation, I had a piece of paper, a Post-it note on my computer screen that said, "I want to be done." And this is so funny, but I want to be done by June, because my anniversary, because I'm married, my anniversary is the first week in June, so I want it
mm.
to be done before my
Before
anniversary.
then, yeah.
And literally, I defended my dissertation 2 days before my anniversary.
Awesome. Just, because you had that time frame, and you just laid. I think we actually do think alike. That's also how I operate. So I have this intention, I have a goal, I get clear on what I want to pursue. But it only stays as intention if it stays as intention if I don't do something about it. And you need to have action. And for me, I couldn't really take action if I don't have that structure. It's almost like
Right.
the structure, the time frame. It helps me to organize where I need to be, what I need to do. And it certainly worked for me during my academic career, and it actually certainly worked for me now that I pursued a more entrepreneurial route. But I have to say as well that I'm trying to balance that now, having the structure and also having the feeling, having to move and go with the flow when it is necessary. So
Yeah.
having that balance is also actually quite important, and I'm still learning
Yeah.
how to do that because I'm so set in my ways, like structure, time frame.
Oh no, so I agree with this because moving into entrepreneurship, it's a different mindset, and it's not as it's considering that the entrepreneur is that we make our own rules.
Yeah.
The structure that we've learned from our past endeavors um, doesn't always work, and so it's about learning how to be flexible and forgive yourself. And so that's taken a while because I would be the first to beat up on myself when I missed the
Mm,
deadline. But now I've learned how to say, okay, well, you didn't make that one, but what's a more reasonable one that you can make, and then become intentional about making that one. So, um, and then sort of, I've been known, I've been known to overbook myself.
mm.
But I'm doing much better in that area, especially as an entrepreneur, because your day is yours.
Yeah,
Um,
you're free reign, really. I love
mhm,
it. I love it.
mhm.
You have the freedom, but at the same time, if you're someone who can get out of control because you're free. You can do whatever you want and be book as much as you like. But yeah, you need to have a degree of self-compassion and be able to look after yourself as well.
And the other part of this, since we're talking about fear, is I think that the environments that some of our sisters can exist in is fear based,
Mm,
um, and that, to me, that's not a healthy environment to be in. Um, First, again, is about recognizing that that's what it is, and two, making the decision on what you want to do about it. Because the other part of this, fear only works if you give into it.
mm,
You can't. To me, I'm like, we're not made to be in fear of other people, of our
mm,
the people that we're supposed to be sharing space with. We're just not made to be in fear with these folks, right?
mm,
And so, if that's the environment, make a decision on whether that's you can exist not in
mm,
fear or not, and then make your decisions based off of those things. But fear is really it's kind of like this hidden portion of the program. Like sometimes we have these real big fears, like you see a
yeah.
spider, you get scared, or it's like you've had some childhood trauma that has instilled fear, or some trauma in your life that has sort of
You
instilled fear in very
associate. Yeah.
real, tangible ways. But sometimes it exists in these quiet, small moments where you're just like, oh, I didn't know that's what that was.
Mm.
And those are the ones that I think get us most often, than those other ones,
Yeah, I mean
because
the other hidden fears, if you like, because the real tangible ones, the things that you can see, like spiders and
right,
people. Yeah, the not so obvious ones are the fear of risk, the fear of failure, the fear of looking like a fool. These
right,
are we are scared. That's why people are afraid of public speaking, for example, because they are afraid that they are going to put themselves forward and people are going to make fun of them. Or
or
for me,
rejection.
yes, exactly, for women, for example, in engineering, for example, they don't put themselves up for leadership positions for promotion or what have you, because they are afraid that, they might fail, or they are afraid that they are not gonna be given the project,
Right.
yeah. So these are sort of not so obvious fears, but they are still fear. You are fearing that you will fail, or you'll fear that you'll get rejected or made fun of, or all that.
Right, and those exist. And you, I mean, you nailed that, because the thing is, it's all of those, um, and those can be insidious, and they can help with the spread of stress and anxiety. So I am a huge, big advocate of self-care. I think it's needed. I think it's the thing that we don't talk about a lot, because we think, we're being selfish, or we don't have time for that, or we're trying to, do for everyone else in our lives, whether, that's your kids or your aunt or your grandmother or your parents or the, whatever. But self-care is a very real thing. And I recommend therapy and counseling.
Mm,
I recommend relaxation. I recommend unwinding in whatever way you unwind that is healthy for you, because then that's a moment for us to get clear. Um, and I'm, like I said, I really feel like that's the work that we need to do, especially if you're working in these spaces. Is like, it can eat you alive. I mean,
mm,
honest, real story. For me, my last engineering job, my boss was a functioning alcoholic who was the VP of the mechanical engineering group. And so there were maybe 20 or 30 engineers that he managed. And if you got something wrong on a project, he would yell at you in front of like
mm,
the whole office, like, who wants that? Like,
mm,
who wants to go, everybody's fully grown adult people.
mm,
So I'm like, well, I didn't want that to happen. I know I didn't want that to happen. That was a real fear. Um, and so it does something to you. That anxiety and anxiousness you feel walking into the building every day is not healthy. So
mm.
when um, I made the decision a long time before I left, like, okay, this is probably going to be my last engineering job. Um, Made decision. I actually went back to school, got a master's degree, um, got my teaching certificate, all while working at this place. And I'm like, okay, this is it.
Wow. You've
I
made
had,
that conscious decision to
mm-hmm,
actually
mm-hmm.
pivot a little bit.
I
Yeah.
had I had my plan. Well, because part of it was two things happening with me. It was like, okay, so this is happening at my job every day, but then there was this need to just. I was just like, how can I still believe that women can do um, any engineering STEM job that a man can do. Like, that belief has never gone away. We have the
Mm,
skills, the talent, the abilities. It's not a matter of the technical skills at all. It's a matter of being in an environment where we're honored as people, people with the same number of skills and can
yeah.
do the job. And so for me, it was always like, I want to reproduce myself. I am a Black woman engineer. I want to reproduce myself. And how do I do that? How do I, like, meaningfully, how do I do that? And for me,
Teach.
everything has been about education. So we need to be educated on the opportunities that are out there. I didn't learn about engineering until I was a junior in high school. Had never even thought about engineering as a thing. So it's like, okay, well, how do we make that happen? So for me, that was becoming a teacher and making sure you saw me standing before you saying, hey, I'm an engineer. Here's what I do. Here's what I'm here to teach you. And here's what an engineer looks like. Right. And then that morphed into, okay, so making sure they have quality programming so that once they decide that STEM is the thing for them, that they can go into that and it be good. It's like they can delve deep into it, and then ask those questions that I never got an opportunity to ask before getting hired into an environment. What is
Mm.
the environment like? Here are some pitfalls that I ran
So you
into.
can be
Here's some
better
lessons that I learned.
prepared before you actually get into it. You can make a more informed decision,
Yes.
and pursue what you want to pursue, knowing that this is what you can expect.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it was the smartest choice that I could make, and it got me away from that environment, but it also pushed me to get very clear about what it is I wanted and what it is I didn't want, and to actively pursue that. So that's the other part of the equation.
Mm.
So getting clear, but then it's the actively pursuing portion where some of us fall down on the job,
Yeah,
which is,
yeah.
and we get it
And
because it can be scary.
and certainly when you do have a coach or a mentor who can help you turn your intentions into action. For me as a psychologist, as a health psychologist, we've seen this in research. The gap between intention and action is massive. The intention, there are a lot of predictors of intention, but the intention to action gap, that's something that you really need to have a drive, and you really need to be clear on what you want to do to actually turn that intention into action. Because also even if you actually take the initial baby steps, and when you face challenges and hurdles, when your purpose isn't clear, and when when what you want isn't really clear, when you face those challenges, it's actually quite easy to give up.
Mm-hmm.
Because why do I have to go through this? It's so difficult. Let's just go back, and where it is comfortable and
Right.
familiar, let's just go
Mm-hmm.
back to that, because this is too hard. So yeah, you need
Yep.
to be clear. Your purpose, your why needs to be so strong, so you can turn your intention into action. And when we say action, it's actually consistent action, because it's not just one step, it's a lot of steps to get to where
Great.
you want to be.
And they change, and so that's the other part of the thing. Is just like, it's like we were talking about earlier about having these deadlines, and sometimes you miss them on being an entrepreneur, but in life in general, because life happens, um, they change. So maybe you didn't take step two, right, right after step one, maybe you didn't do it. It doesn't mean you can't get back on the train, or whatever we're going to call it, the journey, the path, and do step two. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter if you're 25, 35, 45, 57. You can still pursue
keep
that
walking.
thing. You're right. And I think a lot of people, I can't even say a lot of people, I think there are some who give up because it's just like, well, if I didn't do it when I was 25, then it's not for me. And that's not true. That's not proven.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say, when I was a lecturer, my most mature student was 60, doing an undergrad in psychology. Isn't that amazing? Or was she 70? I think she was 70. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think she was 70. Yeah. So, it's never too late.
And that's the thing. Dreams don't die. They sometimes get deferred, but they don't die. And it's up to you to decide, to continue, like you said, continue to walk, towards that thing. And it can be hard, and there can be barriers. And sometimes we're listening to voices in our ear that shouldn't really be in our ear, that tell us, again, who they think we are, who we're supposed to be. And at the end of the day, you get to decide if what they're saying to you is true.
Wonderful. You get to decide. Well, thank you very much. Well, on that note, if do you have a final message, words of inspiration that you'd like to share with our community, particularly those who are maybe living in fear, maybe they want to pursue something, they're thinking twice, they're not really sure if they should go for it. What do you have to say to them?
So I would say to them, well, first, thank you for having me on the show today. And secondly, if you are living in fear, or you're scared, or you unsure, um, I would tell you to take the time to first get quiet, listen to yourself, because again, you never lie to yourself. Like, at the heart of you is the thing you really want to do, and it's up to you to listen and hear clearly. I would then tell you to write it down, and then write down some action steps. That's a good first step. Um, just the writing it down can actually help you get even more clear on where you want to go. Um, and then marinate and pray, or talk to the universe, or whoever, someone you trust, about, where you should go next. I think those are some good things to do to help you, move to help you move. And sometimes we need to think of movement as a mental shift and not necessarily physical steps that we take. So those are some really good, solid
Really
next first step.
practical. I mean, I can still sense the engineer in you. It's like this and then this and then this.
Mhm.
And but what I love about that is you actually start off by going into a quiet space and just finding that headspace to be clear, to find that quiet time, be clear what is it that you want. And when it is clear to you, write down the action steps and then find someone, pray, find a mentor or whatever to actually see if it can be done, and you can take it from there.
True. So yeah, I just think those work. Those have worked for me. They've worked for some of my friends and my clients. So I think they work.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
um,
it certainly does. It certainly does. I mean, certainly for me, that worked for me as well. In terms of, making a transition or
mhm.
just pursuing a new project, or doing something new, having that quiet space to be clear first and foremost what you need to do, and then outline it, write it down, and
Yeah.
start making feel the energy, be inspired. It's like, get excited, get
Yes.
excited about that idea. And when you feel that excitement that, yeah, yeah, this is what I want to do, then the action will actually follow, because, you're just buzzing. It's like, yeah, I want this. This is
Right.
what I want. And, you go for it, and it happens from there.
Yeah. Again, I just really want to reiterate that you should listen to you first. Because I think as women we don't do that enough.
Mm.
We have all these outside voices, and then we're like, oh, okay, that's what I should be doing. But again, you never lie to you. And so if you take that time to really get centered with yourself and then listen, we tell ourselves the truth all the time.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you very much, Natasha. If people want to connect with you and find you, where can they find you? What's the easiest way to
Oh,
connect with you?
okay, so there's several different ways. You can find me on Facebook. You can have a Dr. Tasha page, and it's is DRTOSHIA 11 1 1. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on IG at Dr. Tasha. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Tasha 11. I have a website, and it's www.drtasha.com. All of those are ways to get in contact with me. I'm very responsive. So if you have a question, just hit me up, and I will be sure to answer you back.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And thanks everyone for listening and tuning in today. I hope that you found some inspiration, and I really picked up a lot of stuff from our conversation today. And it did remind me of, some of the initial steps, or some of the fears that I had before I made my transition from academia to what I do now in the online space. But certainly some of the principles of being clear about what you want, and having those initial first steps, the action steps mapped out. I mean, for us here in the PAME Code Facebook community, we always say PAME, which means let's go together. It's really important for you to also find that mentor, that coach, that supportive community that will also help to turn your intentions into action, because certainly it could be quite challenging to just have all these thoughts in your head, try to make it happen when the environment is actually not supporting you. So yeah, go for it. If you're thinking about it, be clear about what you want first and foremost. Listen to your voice, listen to what you have to say to yourself. Be clear about what you want, have the action, be excited about it, and get the support if you need the support as well. So thanks again, Dr. Tasha, and thanks everyone for joining us. We'll catch up again next time for another purposeful conversations with me, Emmy, here in the Family Code Facebook community. Until then, take care and bye for now. Bye.